What's up, gamers? This video is for anyone in the aim assist empire who wants to get a better understanding of the advanced look controls in Apex Legends. I'm going to keep it as short and to the point as possible, so let's just get right into it. So, you're going to want to go to your game settings, go to controller, and then scroll all the way down to advanced look controls. Turn custom look controls on, and you should see all of the settings appear. At first, it might seem a little overwhelming, but there really isn't much to it once you understand what each of these settings are for. So we'll just run from the top down. The Deadzone setting refers to how far you can move the stick before you start to see it take effect in the game. If you're having problems with stick drift, you should try turning this setting up incrementally until the stick drift is gone. If you don't have stick drift, try turning it down until it starts to drift. Personally, I like to have it as low as possible. The next setting is outer threshold, which refers to how far the maximum boundary of your right stick is. This affects something called the extra mechanic, which I'll go more into later, but for now I'd suggest leaving this as default. The next setting is the response curve. If you're unfamiliar with this, essentially think of this visual curve on the right as a multiplier to your sensitivity. It's kind of difficult to explain, but you can sort of picture it as acceleration. I would suggest messing around with it and testing how it affects your crosshair movement. I prefer to play on linear, which is when this setting is all the way down and there is no acceleration applied. But you'll probably want to start on default and tweak it over time to your preference. Below these, we have the per optic settings. There's not much to say about this, but essentially it's a way to change your sensitivity specific to each optic in the game. Personally, I just have the 2x and 3x optic sensitivities turned up a bit. Alright, now we're getting into the juicy goodness. This cluster of settings is all about your non-ADS sensitivity, which is how fast your crosshair moves when you're not aimed down sights. Yaw speed is how quickly your crosshair moves left and right. Pitch speed is how quickly it moves up and down. And the next 4 settings below that affect the extra mechanic. Basically, the extra mechanic makes you turn much faster when you've pushed your right stick all the way to the edge. You can see it working here. I'm only moving my right stick very slightly, but when it reaches the edge, it triggers the extra speed and starts to turn much faster. This can be super useful for turning around quickly, even if your sensitivity is somewhat low. Extra yaw is how quickly the extra mechanic moves your crosshair left and right. Extra pitch is how quickly it moves your crosshair up and down. Typically, you'll want extra pitch to remain at 0, but it's up to your personal preference. The ramp up time is how quickly or slowly your sensitivity transitions into the extra speed. So if this is set higher, it will more gradually speed up after your right stick has been pushed to the edge. Mine is set to 0, there is no transition, and you can see that by how immediate and jerky it looks when I trigger the extra mechanic. The ramp up delay setting is pretty self-explanatory. It adds a delay to the extra speed transition. I keep this set to 0. It's up to personal preference, but I honestly don't know why anyone would want to put a delay on this. The cluster of settings below this are all the exact same as the ones I just covered, except for when you are aiming down sights. I like to have these settings a little slower than my non-ADS settings. Another note about the extra mechanic: you can define the edge of the right stick's boundaries by adjusting the outer threshold setting. The higher this is, the further you have to push the right stick before the extra speed is applied. I like to have mine very close to the actual physical boundary of my controller, but not quite all the way there. And these last 2 settings refer to target compensation or aim assist. Advanced look controls is all about fine-tuning your sensitivity to fit you and your playstyle best. If you need a place to start, you can copy my settings if you'd like, but I would suggest changing the response curve back to default unless you're already used to playing on linear. And if you do copy mine, over time try to adjust the settings to fit you better. The last thing I'll say is, while I'm suggesting you tune and change your settings as you play, don't overdo it. Every time you die, it isn't necessarily because your yaw speed was 2 ticks too high. It's probably just because you're trash. So try to let your current settings really settle in and feel natural before you start making changes. That's all for this video. I hope this helped and was easy to understand. Like I said, I know these settings can be a little overwhelming at first, but once you understand the extra speed mechanic, I think it really simplifies everything. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment or come ask me on Twitch and I will try to clarify. That's all for now. Aim assist gamer.